Millionaire humiliated his pregnant wife for a mistress, but the baby's true father was a billionaire. He was the envy of every room he walked into, dashing, cunning, and flush with wealth. Success clung to him like perfume, and he reveled in the worship of those who whispered his name. But behind the opulent dinners and private jets lurked a treacherous secret, a pregnant wife whose existence he scorned the moment a seductive mistress caught his wandering eye. He humiliated the woman he once promised to cherish, convinced the child growing inside her was his inconvenience. Little did he know, the true father of that unborn baby wasn't just any man, he was a mysterious billionaire with more power and fortune than anyone could imagine. Archer DuPont was born in a working-class neighborhood in Detroit. Growing up, he shared a cramped two-bedroom apartment with his single mother and younger sister. His father had walked out before Archer turned 5, leaving financial struggles that defined his early years. Even as a child, Archer bristled at the constraints of poverty. He pored over any business magazine he could find in the school library, fixating on images of moguls in Forbes or the opulent pages of Vanity Fair. He vowed he'd one day live in that rarefied world. At 17, he earned a small scholarship to a local college studying finance. Ambition fueled his every waking hour. He joined entrepreneurial clubs, devoured books on real estate flips, and interned at an investment firm downtown. A canny mind for numbers guided him toward contrarian investments. He specialized in spotting undervalued properties or unappreciated tech startups, then turning a tidy profit. By his mid-20s, Archer had saved enough to buy a string of distressed properties. He partnered with a construction-savvy friend to renovate and sell them at a premium. The city recognized him as a fresh-faced flipping king, soon featured in local business journals. An investor introduced him to a hedge fund manager, who introduced him to another, and soon Archer's circle expanded to wealthier pockets. He seized the chance to move to Manhattan, the epicenter of American finance. It was there, in New York's swirling mania of power lunches and after-hours deals, that he met Charlotte Barkley, a petite brunette with quiet intelligence. Charlotte hailed from a middle-class family in upstate New York. She worked as an administrative manager at a private equity firm. Her job well beneath Archer's radar until they bumped into each other at a networking event in Soho. While countless socialites angled for Archer's attention, Charlotte's sincerity and low-key charm disarmed him. Their courtship was swift but genuine. Strolls through Central Park, late-night talks about building a meaningful life rather than just chasing money. Archer found a certain solace in her presence. When he proposed a year later, at a small dinner with close friends, many whispered she was out of place in his high-flying world. But Archer insisted Charlotte was his anchor, the moral compass in an environment teeming with shallow aspirations. Even so, ambition never truly sleeps. Archer's success soared. He launched DuPont Holdings, a boutique investment group, and soon boasted a multi-million-dollar net worth. Charlotte, working quietly in the background, tried to keep him grounded. Neither realized that the spark in Archer's eyes, a thirst for grandeur, would eventually lead him astray. Nor did they suspect the monumental twist awaiting them, one tied to the child they would soon create, and the unsuspected father whose wealth towered above even Archer's grand dreams. Archer's Manhattan lifestyle exploded into a realm of flash and dazzle. He purchased a luxury condo in Midtown with a panoramic view of the city. He joined private clubs where the wealthy and powerful mingled, entrepreneurs, CEOs, sometimes Hollywood celebrities. Late nights saw him at exclusive bars, forging alliances with hedge fund managers or real estate moguls. He earned a reputation as a shrewd deal-maker, someone who could out-negotiate even seasoned veterans. Meanwhile, Charlotte found herself in a precarious balance. She admired Archer's drive, but worried about his rapid transformation. The man who once cherished simple joys now vanished for days on business trips, returning with tales of monstrous deals and extravagant parties. Charlotte's attempts at modest living collided with Archer's appetite for the best, high-end suits from Fifth Avenue, $200 per plate dinners at Michelin-starred restaurants, weekends in the Hamptons. She noticed his growing circle of admirers, particularly young women drawn to his confidence and rumored net worth. Despite the friction, Charlotte saw glimpses of the man she fell in love with. Sometimes he'd skip a lavish event to watch old movies with her, heads nestled together, or he'd surprise her with a home-cooked meal after a tough week. Those moments reassured her that beneath the bravado, Archer still valued their bond. So, when Charlotte discovered she was pregnant, hope blossomed in her heart. She imagined a child might remind him of what truly mattered: love, family, and roots. She planned a romantic dinner to share the news. A simple home-cooked meal, candles flickering in the modest dining area of their condo. Archer arrived late, exhausted from a meeting with foreign investors, but perked up at the sight of her excited smile. When she gently broke the news, "We're having a baby," his face lit with surprise, then a cautious joy. He held her close, promising to provide for them, to ensure the child would never face the struggles he did. Charlotte exhaled relief, clinging to the hope that fatherhood might temper his relentless pursuit of status. But as the next weeks unfurled, that promise of closeness fizzled. Archer grew more immersed in his deals than ever. He claimed he needed to secure legacy wealth for the baby. Charlotte attended prenatal appointments alone, while Archer hammered out business expansions in London or negotiated property ventures in Los Angeles. She tried not to resent him, but the loneliness stung. On rare nights home, he collapsed into bed, phone in hand, scanning deals until sleep claimed him. Little did either suspect that a chance encounter and a cunning woman were about to tear apart the fragile balance they struggled to maintain. Archer's star soared, capturing the envy of many, but one misguided step would send everything crashing down. The unborn child he barely acknowledged? Archer believed it was his, though the truth was far more astonishing and far more tied to a man whose shadow loomed over both their fates. The shift began at a charity gala hosted by a media conglomerate in the ballroom of the Ritz-Carlton. Archer, in a tailored tux, navigated the crowd of donors and celebrity guests with practiced ease. Charlotte, feeling the early tugs of morning sickness, stayed home. Archer intended to network for an hour or two, then slip away. But fate had other plans. Across the room, he spotted a striking figure, tall, raven-haired, and exuding a magnetic aura. She was Cassandra Royce, rumored to be a rising star in the modeling world and the new face of a major luxury brand. As Archer chatted with an investor, Cassandra drifted closer, eyes locking on him with predatory curiosity. Her laughter cut through the hush, an invitation to any man bold enough to approach. Archer, ever confident, approached with a glass of champagne. Their conversation crackled from the start. He teased about her billboard near Times Square. She feigned modesty while letting slip hints of elite connections in Europe. She was bold, flirtatious, feeding Archer's ego in a way Charlotte never did. Within minutes, they found themselves whispering in a corner, ignoring the swirl of the gala. Cassandra seemed genuinely impressed by Archer's success story, showering him with compliments that made him grin like a star-struck boy. He told himself it was harmless, networking after all. Yet, as the night wore on, Cassandra led him to a private lounge in the hotel, where the conversation turned personal. She inquired about his marriage, voice laced with seductive sympathy when he admitted Charlotte's pregnancy kept her from attending. Cassandra tsked sympathetically, hinting that Archer deserved a bit of fun. He felt a rush, a reckless thrill. He sipped more champagne, ignoring the pang of guilt that flickered in his mind. In the weeks that followed, texts from Cassandra pinged his phone at odd hours, witty one-liners, provocative photos, invites to high society events. Archer responded with caution at first. Then caution gave way to curiosity. Curiosity to temptation. Cassandra enticed him, promising access to a glamorous world of runway shows, private yacht parties, and the frisson of illicit desire. Archer, already drunk on success, found this new dimension of excitement irresistible. As he edged deeper into Cassandra's orbit, Charlotte sensed the shift. He was more distant, more secretive with his phone. He left earlier for business breakfasts and came home later from cocktail meetings. The once lingering kisses he gave her turned perfunctory. She tried to brush it aside, attributing it to stress over upcoming expansions, but an icy dread built in her heart. None realized how far Archer would fall, or how Cassandra's manipulations were carefully plotted for her own gain. And as Charlotte's belly swelled, the unborn baby symbolized a love Archer was in danger of forsaking for momentary thrills. Meanwhile, a much larger secret brewed, one that would overshadow even Cassandra's deceptions and tie Charlotte's child to an entirely different, far more powerful legacy. Spring arrived with a flourish of new blossoms and mild air, but in Archer's condo, tension thickened. Charlotte was now midway through her pregnancy, her body beginning to show. She'd worked diligently at her job until the company downsized, forcing her into an unexpected break. At first, she saw it as a blessing, time to rest and prepare for motherhood. But Archer's disinterest in family moments troubled her. He no longer bothered asking about doctor visits or nursery plans. Instead, he spoke incessantly of a major real estate project in Dubai that demanded all his energy. One evening, Charlotte discovered a heavy silver bracelet in Archer's jacket pocket. Sensing it wasn't for her, she hated chunky jewelry. She confronted him gently. His reaction was chilling. He snatched it from her hands, sneering that she should mind her own business. "It's a corporate gift I forgot to hand over," he lied, refusing to meet her eyes. Later that night, Charlotte saw a private message pop up on Archer's laptop while she was updating a bank statement. The words were from Cassandra, referencing the gorgeous silver piece and thanking Archer for the romantic night. Her heart pounded in horror. She felt the baby move within her, as if sensing her agony. She waited up for Archer, tears brimming. When he returned past midnight, Charlotte confronted him. His stony expression confirmed everything. Rather than deny it, Archer exploded. "You're suffocating me, Charlotte," he shouted, voice echoing in the living room. "I'm not cut out for domestic chores and whining about prenatal vitamins. Cassandra understands my world. She doesn't weigh me down with petty drama." His words struck like knives. He then drove the final spike. "Look at you waddling around, acting like I owe you my life just because you're carrying some baby." Charlotte reeled, tears streaming. She pleaded with him to remember their vows, their love story. But he only grew more vicious. "If you can't handle me living the life I deserve, go crawl back to your old life. You never truly fit this circle anyway." The ultimate humiliation arrived the next morning. Archer, in a chillingly calm manner, told Charlotte to gather her things and find another place to live. "I'll cover your bills," he said with cold detachment, "but I won't live like a hostage." She could barely speak, mind spinning with heartbreak. In one devastating stroke, he banished the woman who once championed his dreams, pregnant with what he believed to be his child. As Charlotte packed her suitcase, a swirl of emotions battered her: shock, grief, a flicker of anger. She couldn't fathom how the man she supported unconditionally had become so cruel. Little did she know, fate's twist would soon reveal a far greater secret about her baby's paternity. And Archer, in humiliating the person who should have mattered most, had unwittingly set himself on a path toward a karma more brutal than he could ever imagine. Charlotte found herself on the street, wheeling a modest suitcase, trying to hail a taxi through blurred tears. She had a little savings from her old job, but nowhere near enough to secure an immediate apartment in pricey Manhattan. The pain of Archer's betrayal eclipsed every other concern. Her mind replayed his venomous words. She kept a trembling hand on her belly, determined not to panic for the baby's sake. She called her old friend, Tessa Monroe, a college acquaintance who now ran a small art gallery in Brooklyn. Tessa, shocked by the news, offered Charlotte a spare room in her brownstone until she got back on her feet. Charlotte accepted gratefully, arriving with puffy eyes and a broken spirit. Tessa's welcoming hug nearly undid her composure. "You can stay here as long as you need," Tessa said gently, offering a warm meal and a private space to process. Days passed in a fog of heartbreak. Charlotte visited her OB-GYN alone, hearing the baby's heartbeat as tears leaked onto the exam table. She confided in Tessa about Archer's affair with Cassandra, about his abrupt cruelty. Tessa seethed with indignation, encouraging Charlotte to consider a lawyer. But Charlotte recoiled. She still clung to an ember of hope that Archer might regret his actions, though each passing day eroded that optimism. Desperate for stability, she found a part-time bookkeeping job at a local accounting office. The pay was modest, but she needed an income. She also reached out to a non-profit that helped single, pregnant women find affordable housing. The waiting list was long, but the staff assured her they'd do what they could. She spent evenings alone in Tessa's spare room, quietly reading baby care books, her hand drifting protectively over her growing bump. Archer, meanwhile, sent texts, occasionally cruel jabs, instructing her to stop playing victim. He blamed her for ruining his vibe when he felt unstoppable. She was stunned by his callous transformation. Cassandra's presence grew in Archer's social media, the pair flaunting dinners at Le Bernardin, weekends in the Hamptons. In a twisted stroke of arrogance, Archer boasted about an upcoming trip with Cassandra to meet potential Middle Eastern investors. No mention of the wife he'd exiled or the child she carried. Charlotte struggled with loneliness. She dreaded the thought of raising a child alone, financially vulnerable and overshadowed by the father's wealth. But an odd sense of resolve began flickering within her. She remembered how she'd supported Archer from scratch. She could harness that resilience for herself and her baby. Unbeknownst to her, a monumental revelation about the child's true father was inching closer, destined to upend everything she assumed about her future and to deliver a reckoning upon Archer, who believed he'd never face consequences for his cruelty. Weeks bled into months. Charlotte's pregnancy advanced to the point where she felt regular kicks, the baby's movements both comforting and bittersweet. She tried not to dwell on Archer's betrayal, focusing instead on building a humble but stable life. By day, she balanced her bookkeeping tasks. By night, she researched support networks for single mothers, sometimes losing herself in Tessa's world of art shows for a respite. One evening, Tessa came home to find Charlotte sifting through an old photo album, eyes glossed with memory. Inside were snapshots from a year before she met Archer, shots of Charlotte during a short internship in Europe, a time of carefree adventure. Tessa nudged closer, curious about the nostalgic look on Charlotte's face. "This trip to Geneva," Charlotte murmured, tracing her finger over a photo of a regal building. She recalled an enchanting weekend with a charismatic foreign businessman she'd met at a finance conference. They'd shared coffees, conversations about life and ambition, and even an impulsive night that Charlotte filed away as a sweet fling. Never expecting to see him again, Tessa arched an eyebrow. "Did you stay in touch with him?" Charlotte shook her head. "Not really. We exchanged a few emails that faded out." He was complicated. Older, extremely wealthy from what I gathered, but also guarded. We parted amicably. She closed the album, a faint blush coloring her cheeks. I hardly think about it. But later that night, Charlotte's thoughts circled back. The timeline was hazy. She'd always assumed the baby was Archer's after all. They'd been trying for a few months, in a half-hearted way, but her fling in Geneva was closer to the present than she initially recalled. She did the math, heart pounding, a flicker of possibility sparked. Could the baby belong to that mysterious man instead? The notion felt absurdly far-fetched. Yet she couldn't ignore the dates. The memory of that man's name surfaced. Felix Vandenberger, a billionaire with rumored ties to major philanthropic networks. She recalled glimpsing his photo in international business columns. Could it be that her fleeting romance with him had borne fruit? A rush of confusion gripped her. She'd never intended to hide a pregnancy from him. She didn't even think they had parted on terms that warranted an update, and she'd been so certain it was Archer's child, until Archer's cruelty forced her to scrutinize everything. Doubt gnawed at her, urging her to confirm the baby's paternity for the sake of clarity, if nothing else. Charlotte confided the suspicion to Tessa, who sat stunned. If this child belongs to a billionaire, that changes everything, Tessa gasped. Charlotte nodded, torn between disbelief and the need for answers. It wasn't about money, she had no illusions of fairy tale rescues, but truth mattered, especially for the baby's future. As her exile days mounted, a plan formed. She needed a discreet paternity test. Only then could she unravel the baby's true lineage and face the seismic ramifications such a revelation might bring. Under Tessa's guidance, Charlotte visited a private clinic recommended by an acquaintance of Tessa's, someone well-versed in handling sensitive matters for high-profile clients. The clinic specialized in advanced genetic testing, ensuring confidentiality for those who needed it. Charlotte, anxious and apprehensive, explained her unusual predicament to the doctor. Two possible fathers, one a millionaire who discarded her, the other a figure of immense, albeit distant, wealth. The physician assured Charlotte that a paternity test could be conducted using her DNA and the baby's through a minimally invasive prenatal technique that examined fetal genetic material circulating in her bloodstream. As for comparing it to the potential father, they'd need his sample, but she had none. Charlotte's only hope was that the test might rule out Archer's paternity, thereby confirming by exclusion that the baby wasn't his. That alone would be a huge step. Blood drawn, Charlotte was told to wait a week for results. She tried to brace herself, occupying her mind with daily chores, frequent walks in the local park, and the quieter joys of feeling the baby's gentle nudges. The nights, however, were restless. She recalled Felix's face, kind eyes, a reassuring voice that spoke of big ideas for philanthropy in Africa, nights of laughter in a Geneva cafe. She wrestled with the question of whether she should contact him, but how did one approach a near stranger about fathering a child from a fleeting liaison? Meanwhile, Archer's life rattled on. Rumors from mutual acquaintances reached Charlotte's ears that Archer and Cassandra were traveling across Europe, attending fashion shows and partying in Monaco. Cassandra's social media flaunted snapshots of them clinking champagne glasses on a yacht, mocking any sense of shame. Tessa seethed on Charlotte's behalf, but Charlotte found herself feeling strangely numb. Her heartbreak had mutated into steely resolve, especially now that a deeper secret might emerge. On the 7th day, the clinic phoned. Charlotte's heartbeat hammered as she listened to the doctor's measured tone. The test strongly indicated that Archer was not the baby's father. Charlotte sank onto a chair, tears sliding down her cheeks. Relief, confusion, and a flood of new questions converged. If Archer wasn't the father, logic pointed to Felix. The idea that her child would be the heir of a billionaire felt surreal. Tessa found Charlotte trembling in the living room, phone still in hand. "He's not the father," Charlotte murmured. "Archer's not the father." For a moment, Tessa broke into a cautious smile. This lifted the cloud of dealing with Archer's potential custody or involvement. But the enormity of the next step loomed. They discussed whether Charlotte should try to reach Felix. She had only an outdated email address and a phone number scrawled in an old contact note. They had parted ways on friendly terms, but he was notoriously private. Would he believe her story? Would he even respond? Charlotte's choice was clear. She had to at least try. The child deserved the truth, and so did Felix, no matter what the outcome. Little did Charlotte know how drastically this revelation would reshape all their fates and deliver a long overdue karmic backlash to Archer, the man who had so cruelly humiliated her in her time of need. Late one evening, with trembling fingers, Charlotte typed out an email to the address she found in her old contacts. She kept it concise and honest. An apology for the strange contact, a brief explanation of their brief romance in Geneva, and the shocking discovery about the pregnancy and subsequent paternity test. She wasn't demanding anything, only stating that if Felix wanted to discuss, she was open. She agonized over every word, uncertain if the address was still valid or if he'd respond at all. Days passed in silence. Tessa tried to keep Charlotte's spirits up, reminding her it could take time. Meanwhile, Charlotte navigated the awkward reality that the man who cast her out wasn't even the father of her unborn child. She refused to update Archer, wanting no more cruelty from him. Her phone calls with her mother, who lived in another state, provided emotional comfort. She downplayed the heartbreak, focusing on the baby's health. Then, a week after sending the email, she received a curt reply. "Charlotte, your message surprised me. I'm traveling but would like to speak further. This matter is delicate. Please provide a phone number where I can reach you securely. Felix van den Berg." Charlotte's heart pounded. She quickly responded with her phone number, hands shaking at the thought of hearing his voice after all this time. Less than 24 hours later, her phone buzzed with an international number. She inhaled and answered. Felix's voice was deeper than she remembered, a calm timbre that instantly brought back memories of hushed conversations in European cafes. He expressed shock, yet handled the news with grace. He asked for details of the paternity test, listened intently as she recounted the heartbreak with Archer, and offered measured empathy. "I'd like to confirm everything on my end as well," he said gently. "Would you be willing to allow me to arrange a test once I'm back in the United States?" Charlotte agreed. They spoke for nearly an hour, discussing logistics and the emotional upheaval each had faced since their fling. Felix admitted he'd often thought of her fondly, but assumed their lives had moved on too far. Now, faced with the possibility of fatherhood, he wanted to do the right thing. Yet, he also insisted on total discretion. He was a well-known figure in European business circles, and rumors flew easily. As the call ended, Charlotte felt a sense of cautious relief. Felix would be in New York in a couple of weeks. They would do a more definitive test, then decide the future. Tessa squealed with excitement, imagining a fairy tale outcome. But Charlotte kept her hopes in check. She wasn't after a rescue. She simply wanted honesty for herself and her unborn child. In a swanky penthouse across the ocean, Felix hung up, leaning back in his leather chair. A swirl of emotions churned in him: surprise, curiosity, a flicker of paternal protectiveness. He vowed to handle the matter with respect and integrity. Meanwhile, an oblivious Archer continued parading with his mistress, unaware that the baby he scorned was not his at all, and that a retribution was quietly rolling his way in unstoppable waves. 2 weeks later, Felix arrived in New York, setting up temporary residence at the Peninsula Hotel in Midtown, a discreet location that afforded him both privacy and luxury. He texted Charlotte to arrange a meeting, suggesting a quiet brunch at an upscale but low-key restaurant. Charlotte, nerves frayed, donned a simple maternity dress. She felt both eager and anxious about seeing Felix face to face after so long. When she entered the restaurant, she spotted him immediately, tall, impeccably dressed in a navy suit, hair slightly silvered at the temples. He stood, smiling softly, and offered a polite hug. Memories flooded Charlotte his gentle wit, the casual banter they once shared in Geneva. Yet the context now was far more serious. They exchanged small talk until the waiter brought them coffee, then delved into the matter at hand. Felix was direct but kind. "I've arranged for a top geneticist at a private lab to perform a paternity test," he explained. "We'll have conclusive results within a week. If the child is mine, I want to be involved both financially and personally, if you'll allow it." Charlotte's eyes welled with cautious gratitude. "All I ask is respect and honesty," she said, voice trembling. "I've had enough betrayal." Felix nodded, understanding the weight of her reference. They parted with a handshake, though she sensed a quiet compassion in his gaze, a promise that he wouldn't abandon her. The following day, they visited the lab, each providing the necessary samples. When Charlotte stepped out, she saw Felix waiting near the reception desk, arms folded, a mix of anticipation and composure in his posture. A wave of calm washed over her. Whatever the outcome, at least this man seemed decent, far from the cruelty Archer inflicted. But fate had other ideas for drama. Unbeknownst to them, Archer, back from a month-long spree in Europe with Cassandra, had begun sniffing around Charlotte's life out of misplaced curiosity or guilt. One of his acquaintances spotted Charlotte and a distinguished older man entering a private lab near Central Park. Archer's suspicion flared. He'd always assumed Charlotte would come crawling back or attempt to claim child support. Instead, it appeared she was consorting with some unknown figure. The acquaintance relayed rumors that the man's accent sounded European, that he reeked of influence. Archer's pride bristled. Who was this stranger stepping into Charlotte's life and her unborn child's? Despite having cast her aside, Archer's sense of possession kicked in. He dug for answers, calling mutual contacts, some of whom recognized the name Felix van den Berger as a Belgian billionaire with philanthropic ties and major business holdings in Asia and Europe. A swirl of anger and jealousy consumed Archer. He might have dismissed Charlotte, but the thought of her connecting with a man overshadowing his wealth stoked his insecurities. He told himself it was about protecting his parental rights, ignorant of the truth about the baby's paternity. Meanwhile, the clock ticked toward the DNA, results that would confirm Felix's place in Charlotte's life and set the stage for Archer's final comeuppance. The day of the DNA results dawned with unseasonable warmth. Charlotte tried to busy herself with errands, but her thoughts kept drifting to the lab. She received a call around noon. The head geneticist's voice was calm and professional, congratulating her. The baby was indeed Felix's with near certainty. Charlotte's legs nearly buckled in relief and amazement. She thanked him, tears of myriad emotions streaming down her face. She immediately phoned Felix, who answered on the first ring. He listened quietly, then murmured, "I see." A pause, then. "I'd like to see you, both of you, through this journey, Charlotte. I want to do right by my child." His tone was resolute. She felt a surge of gratitude, though also caution. He was practically a stranger in many ways, yet father to her unborn baby. They agreed to meet that evening at Felix's suite in the Peninsula Hotel for a private conversation. Charlotte arrived, feeling dwarfed by the suite's tasteful opulence. Felix greeted her with a gentle smile, leading her to a plush sofa. His expression mixed excitement, apprehension, and a protective warmth that Archer had never shown. He offered her tea. Then they discussed how to handle the next steps, medical support, a potential living arrangement, and how Felix's involvement might evolve. At some point, she asked timidly about their past connection. We never labeled our fling. It was so brief. Felix nodded. True, but it was memorable, Charlotte. I respected your space, assumed we'd parted as friends. Now we have a child's future to consider. I can provide every resource, but I won't force anything on you. This is your life. Tears welled. Thank you for understanding, she whispered, voice wavering. Their conversation meandered into deeper territory, Felix's background, his philanthropic ventures, and how he managed privacy. He assured her they could keep the matter discreet until she decided otherwise. She confided how Archer's betrayal had shattered her self-worth, leaving her wary of trusting another man's promises. Felix's gaze softened. I'm not Archer. I have my flaws, but cruelty isn't one of them. He gently squeezed her hand, offering reassurance. Charlotte exhaled, feeling something in her chest untangle, a sense that she wasn't alone in this anymore. Unbeknownst to them, Archer was staging a confrontation, driven by jealousy and the half-baked notion that Charlotte's unborn child must be his. He cajoled a friend into revealing Charlotte's whereabouts. That friend spotted Charlotte entering the peninsula and texted Archer with details. Archer's fury ignited. He pictured Charlotte scheming with some wealthy foreigner, spinning lies about the baby. He had no inkling that the child was, in fact, never his, and that the real father overshadowed him in power and wealth by a landslide. As the final pieces lined up, the stage was set for a dramatic collision of truths, guaranteed to unleash all the heartbreak, karma, and redemption swirling beneath the surface. Neither Charlotte nor Felix suspected how soon that collision would come, or how explosive its aftermath would be. 2 days later, Felix invited Charlotte to an exclusive charity event at a boutique gallery in Chelsea. He suggested it would be a gentle way to reintroduce Charlotte to social gatherings, albeit among an elegant, philanthropic crowd. Charlotte hesitated, recalling how Archer's circles used to mock her modest background. But Felix insisted she'd be welcomed with warmth, praising her intelligence and gentle spirit. Dressed in a simple, flowing gown that accommodated her growing bump, Charlotte arrived at the event, her nerves tangling. Felix greeted her at the entrance, introducing her to a handful of art patrons and business allies. She found them polite, if a bit curious about her. Felix stuck by her side, ensuring she felt comfortable. For once, Charlotte sensed a possibility that her future might hold something beautiful beyond betrayal. Then, the night took a dire turn. Archer, having leveraged every contact to find out where Felix might be, marched into the gallery. He wore a tailored suit, his face twisted in anger. Spotting Charlotte standing with Felix near a painting, Archer strode over, ignoring the stunned murmurs of onlookers. Charlotte's heart lurched the moment she saw him. "So this is the famous billionaire you've latched onto?" Archer spat, loud enough for nearby guests to hear. "You tossed our marriage aside to run after someone richer? Is that it?" Charlotte froze, mortified by the scene. Felix stepped forward, voice cool. "Sir, one don't believe we've met." "But you're being extremely rude." Archer let out a harsh laugh. "I'm rude. She's my wife, pregnant with my child, and you're, what? Some sugar daddy?" Whispers rippled among the attendees. Charlotte tried to speak, but Archer cut her off, jabbing a finger at Felix. "She's carrying my baby, you pompous, your baby?" Felix interjected with quiet authority. "I have definitive proof that's not true, and you discarded Charlotte, if I recall." Archer's face paled momentarily. "What nonsense! She's mine. I kicked her out because she was—" He faltered, seeing the moral outrage in the crowd's faces. Some recognized him from earlier business coverage, recalling the gossip of him humiliating his pregnant wife. Meanwhile, Felix remained calm, turning to Charlotte for confirmation. Gathering courage, Charlotte spoke in a trembling but determined voice. "Archer, I had a paternity test done. You're not the father. Felix is," gasps from onlookers. Archer's shock contorted into raw fury. You cheated on me! And how dare you?" His voice cracked into a higher pitch. The spectacle drew more stares, cameras from phones capturing every second. Before Archer could unleash more vitriol, Felix stepped forward, gently shielding Charlotte with his presence. "You humiliated and abandoned this woman. You never cared for the child you believed was yours. So don't pretend to play the victim now." The hush in the gallery felt electric. Archer, trembling with rage, could only sputter. In that moment, the truth glared bright and merciless. Charlotte owed him nothing. She had found the real father of her baby one, who stood by her with dignity. The karmic wheel had turned, unveiling Archer's cruelty before a public audience. He stormed out, pushing past startled guests, curses trailing behind him. Charlotte pressed a hand to her belly, tears glistening. A wave of relief mingled with sorrow. In her darkest imagination, she never pictured a public showdown quite like this. Yet it was done. The final tie with Archer was severed, witnessed by all, leaving him with the humiliation he once inflicted upon her. Meanwhile, Felix gently guided her away, promising she was safe now, unaware how swift the next wave of retribution would be for Archer DuPont. By the next morning, social media buzzed with talk of the explosive gallery confrontation. Witnesses posted phone clips showing Archer shouting, then Felix calmly declaring paternal rights. The tabloids devoured the juicy spectacle. Millionaire's wife's baby fathered by Belgian billionaire. Read one sensational headline. Archer woke to an onslaught of calls and messages from appalled business partners, many of whom decided to distance themselves from the negative press. Within hours, Archer's empire felt the tremors. Investors threatened to pull out, citing reputational risk. They worried about the stability of a man who had so publicly lost control. Archer tried to shrug it off, but PR crises don't fade easily. Cassandra, who had reveled in Archer's wealth, found the scandal overshadowing her own brand efforts. Her modeling contracts faced sudden postponements. She confronted Archer, furious that he dragged them both into humiliating gossip. The humiliation wasn't limited to headlines. Archer's personal staff started quitting, unwilling to endure the toxic environment that festered under his volatile temper. Partnerships he'd nurtured for years dissolved. Even competitor financiers took veiled jabs, whispering that if he couldn't handle personal affairs, maybe his professional judgment was equally flawed. Cassandra, sensing the financial meltdown, parted ways as well. She posted a cryptic statement on Instagram implying Archer had misled her about his wife's situation. Her fans rushed to comfort her, leaving Archer painted as the manipulative villain. Furious, Archer realized he was left with no mistress, no supportive allies, and a tarnished reputation. Even his high-end condo started to feel stiflingly empty. Meanwhile, Charlotte and Felix tried to move on with quiet grace. Felix offered Charlotte a comfortable stay at one of his properties, a discreet penthouse near Central Park, but she declined for now, still cherishing her independence. Instead, they met regularly, discussing co-parenting plans and next steps. Over dinners and occasional walks, Felix found himself drawn deeper to her gentle spirit, while Charlotte noticed the sincerity in his every gesture. They tiptoed around the possibility of romance, each mindful of the baby's central importance. In public, speculation abounded. Would the pregnant Charlotte marry the Belgian billionaire? Was Archer reeling from the ultimate betrayal? Some cynics claimed Charlotte orchestrated everything to land a richer partner, but those who knew the real story defended her. Tessa, fiercely loyal, clapped back on social media, revealing how Archer humiliated Charlotte before she ever discovered the baby's true father. The truth overshadowed the malicious gossip. As the rumor mill churned, Archer retreated, battered by the karmic boomerang of his own cruelty. He lost deals, faced financial strains, and realized that the humiliations he once doled out had come home to roost. In a city that thrives on scandal, there is no mercy for those who show none. The story might have ended there, but fate had one more chapter of reckoning to hand out, one that would push Archer's regret to a breaking point and test Charlotte's willingness to forgive even the gravest wrongs. 4 weeks after the gallery confrontation, Charlotte found herself at Tessa's brownstone, sipping herbal tea while sorting through baby items. A ring at the door disrupted their quiet afternoon. Tessa answered, then returned with an ashen expression. "It's Archer," she whispered. Charlotte's pulse spiked. She stood, heart pounding, as Archer stepped inside disheveled, lacking the polished confidence he once wore like armor. Tessa hovered protectively. Archer, however, approached Charlotte with a meekness that stunned her. His suit was wrinkled, dark circles etched under his eyes. Charlotte, I need to talk," he said, voice quivering. "I know how this must look." Charlotte stiffened, recalling the hateful words he once spat, the way he callously kicked her out. Part of her wanted to slam the door in his face, but Tessa nodded encouragingly. Charlotte sighed, motioning for him to speak. 5 minutes, she said tersely. Archer struggled to find the right words. Eventually, he blurted out an apology. "I was wrong," he rasped. I humiliated you, acted like you were nothing. Now everything's collapsing, my business, my reputation." And he swallowed hard. "I keep thinking about how you always believed in me when no one else did." Anger flared in Charlotte's chest. "So you're here because you lost everything?" Not exactly the best reason to come crawling back. She tried to remain calm for the baby's sake, a wave of protective motherhood surging within her. He shook his head, tears glistening. "I've been left with nothing. Cassandra's gone. Investors turned their backs. I don't blame them. I deserve it. But I came to say sorry, not for pity, for closure. I know now the baby isn't mine." His voice cracked. "Felix is a better man, obviously. I just wanted to ask if you could forgive me for my cruelty, so I can move forward without this guilt." Charlotte's eyes brimmed with tears, not out of longing for him, but at the wrenching memory of how swiftly he turned on her. She sensed the sincerity in his remorse, but the wounds ran deep. "You destroyed my trust, Archer," she said quietly. "I'll never forget that. I'm carrying a child who isn't yours, and ironically, it freed me from your shadow. Now you want forgiveness?" He bowed his head. "I can't fix what I did, but I'm willing to do anything to atone, even if it's just leaving you in peace." I had to try. Silence stretched. Tessa glared, arms crossed. Yet Charlotte felt a flicker of empathy. This was the Archer she once knew, vulnerable, shaped by regret. She finally nodded, voice soft. "I accept your apology," she said, "but our paths are separate now. My priority is this child. I have no room for more heartbreak." Relief shuddered through Archer. He nodded, tears dropping, then turned to leave. At the doorway, he paused. "Thank you," he whispered. "I hope someday you find happiness, and that your child never experiences pain like I caused." Then he was gone, footsteps fading. Charlotte stood there, trembling from the emotional weight. Tessa rubbed her back gently, murmuring words of comfort. Outside, Archer walked away, shoulders hunched, uncertain how to rebuild his life. Perhaps, in that final exchange, a seed of redemption had been planted. But the ultimate triumph lay in Charlotte forging a new future free of the torment he inflicted and with a father truly worthy of the child she carried. The months that followed tested Charlotte's resolve and emotional fortitude. She continued living with Tessa, who cheered her through every milestone, the baby shower, The last-minute changes to her part-time job and the swirl of paparazzi speculation that died down once a newer scandal seized the tabloids. She maintained a gentle friendship with Felix. They met regularly for prenatal appointments, shared quiet dinners discussing baby names, and mulled over how best to co-parent. As her due date neared, Felix proposed a more permanent solution. He owned a serene estate just outside the city, removed from gossip and prying eyes. He offered Charlotte a private cottage on the grounds, with no obligations except her well-being. Initially hesitant to rely so heavily on his resources, Charlotte realized it might be best for the baby. Tessa encouraged her, pointing out that Felix wasn't controlling but genuinely supportive. So Charlotte accepted, relocating in her 8th month to the estate's cozy cottage. Surrounded by blooming gardens and hushed landscapes, she found a tranquility that had been missing since Archer's betrayal. Meanwhile, Archer lurked on the periphery. Through mutual contacts, Charlotte learned he was dismantling parts of his failing empire, selling assets to cover debts. Cassandra had publicly disavowed him. The last she heard, he was renting a modest apartment in Queens, a far cry from his lavish condo. She felt no glee at his misfortune, only the faint pity of one who once cared for him. Felix, discreet and kind, never pressed Charlotte to define their relationship. He focused on fatherhood, ensuring she had the best medical care, a nanny lined up if she wanted, and an open invitation to any philanthropic travel he undertook. In quiet moments, they confided deeper truths, Felix confessing how he'd closed himself off after heartbreaks, Charlotte revealing the lingering insecurities from her ordeal with Archer. A bond grew, one step at a time, built on understanding rather than heady romance. As Charlotte's due date came within days, her breath hitched with nerves and excitement. Felix rearranged his schedule to remain close, prepared to dash to the hospital at a moment's notice. Tessa frequently visited, marveling at the cottage's serene atmosphere and noticing the subtle warmth between Charlotte and Felix. She teased them gently about the possibility of becoming a real family. Charlotte blushed, not denying the spark that had blossomed between them. Still, overshadowing everything was the bittersweet knowledge of how differently it all began. Her pregnancy had once been overshadowed by Archer's scorn. Now, it was treasured by a man of far greater means, but also a deeper sincerity. No matter the future, Charlotte had reclaimed her sense of self, ready to welcome her child into a world shaped by love and fresh opportunities. The final chapter awaited the baby's arrival, the last measure of Archer's karmic downfall, and the deciding moment for Charlotte's new life with Felix. A cool autumn morning found Charlotte awakened by mild contractions. By noon, they intensified. Felix, keeping vigil at the cottage, swiftly guided her to a nearby private hospital. The hours that followed were a blur of pain, controlled breathing, and the comforting presence of Tessa and Felix at her side. Late that evening, with a triumphant cry, Charlotte's baby girl entered the world. Tears slid down Charlotte's cheeks as the doctors placed the newborn in her arms. She traced the tiny features, a surge of protective love overwhelming her. Felix stood behind them, eyes shining with awe, gently placing a hand on Charlotte's shoulder. In that moment, all past betrayals seemed distant. The child's first wail declared a new beginning, forging a bond of fatherhood. Felix never anticipated but embraced wholeheartedly. News traveled quickly. Tessa posted a private update to close friends celebrating the arrival of Aurora Grace. Archer, hearing word through mutual acquaintances, sent a brief text, "Congratulations. I wish you both happiness." It was short, haunted by regret. Charlotte read it, feeling a quiet closure. She'd found the family she needed, away from the man who once tore her down. For Archer, It was another pang of realization that he had cast aside the best thing in his life on an empty whim. As Charlotte recuperated, Felix marveled at his daughter, delicately cradling her in the hospital room. They spoke in hushed tones about how to proceed legally, financially, personally. Felix insisted on naming the child his heir in every sense, though he respected Charlotte's desire for autonomy. He teased about providing Aurora with the best of everything, from education to philanthropic influences. But Charlotte reminded him she needs love and grounded values more than lavish extremes. He nodded, wholeheartedly agreeing. In time, Charlotte was discharged to recover at the cottage, which blossomed with baby items. Tessa visited daily, showering Aurora with affection. Felix balanced his global commitments with fatherhood, discovering that the greatest joy lay not in boardrooms, but in the gentle breathing of his newborn on his chest. Charlotte, once humiliated and cast out, now stood amid an environment of respect and genuine care. And what of Archer DuPont, the millionaire undone by vanity and betrayal? Word spread that he'd retreated from the city's spotlight, rumored to be rebuilding a smaller, more humble firm or working as a consultant. Some said he attended therapy to unearth the emotional wounds that fueled his earlier cruelty. Others speculated he planned to leave Manhattan altogether. Regardless, few missed him in the circles where he once boasted. His downfall was a cautionary tale of how hubris and disloyalty can savage even the mightiest success. In the hush of a dimly lit nursery, Charlotte stood, watching Aurora asleep in her crib. Felix stepped beside her, gently resting a hand on her arm. Their eyes met, and no words were needed. The journey had been fraught with heartbreak and twists, but it led to this moment, a new dawn shaped by unanticipated fatherhood, unwavering motherly devotion, and the kindness of a man who had stepped in to cherish what another had so foolishly discarded. Life's most significant lessons can hide behind painful betrayals, unexpected fortunes, and the resilience of a heart refusing to break. For Charlotte, heartbreak became the threshold of a remarkable new path, one that replaced humiliation with the devotion of a man infinitely more worthy. Archer DuPont learned, too late, that wealth and arrogance can crumble in the face of simple human kindness. And the child he once scorned? She became the beloved daughter of a billionaire father who treasured her mother in a way Archer never did. If this story struck a chord, reminding you of the power of second chances, the sting of betrayal, and the beauty of new beginnings, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us continue crafting tales of drama, redemption, and the unbreakable bonds that hold us together. Stay tuned for more stories that explore the heights of ambition and the depths of the human heart.